What up, sports fans? Waxon Wednesday, Jake Waxman, top level, let two guys talk sports. Let's go. Happy March Madness, everyone. Welcome to, in a lot of people's opinions, the best time of year of sports, or at least the best time of year for the basketball. But before we get to that, alright, NFL free agency. It's been happening like crazy. And just this week, the news that Bears fans like myself have been waiting for happened or took place. So the breaking news for those who did not hear, the Chicago Bears have officially traded Justin Fields to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a conditional draft pick. I believe it's a 6th-round pick, which could be a 4th-round pick, depending on how Fields performs in his first year at Pittsburgh, if I'm correct. This is for 2025, this pick. Well, back in a previous video, I said, alright, what the Bears do this offseason will be shaped by one of two paths they take. And it was either, one path was they trade Justin Fields, the other path would have been they kept Justin Fields. Well, they have chosen their path. They have traded Justin Fields, so that means it's time to draft a quarterback if you're the Chicago Bears. And all signs are pointing to Caleb Williams. Alright, my thoughts are this, okay? I hoped this wouldn't happen. I'm bummed about it. It sucks. But it is what it is, and I'm not surprised this happened. And I will say this, I've always been a Justin Fields fan, and I always will. But, you know, keeping him around for a 4th season, admittedly, was going to be a huge risk for the Chicago Bears. Because then you would have to think about contract talks and all that stuff. And would he have taken that step forward? You know, all signs were kind of unfortunately pointing to no. So it was a huge risk. And had he had a great game against Green Bay and had he and the Bears beaten the Packers and kept the Packers out of the playoffs, Justin Fields would have likely been staying in Chicago. But that didn't happen. And despite the improvement by the Bears and despite the improvement that Justin Fields showed, it just wasn't enough, and he is now a Pittsburgh Steeler. I mean, it just didn't work out for Fields. You know, I hate it for him. It's just one of those things. I appreciate what Justin Fields did. He gave it his all, gave it everything he had. Just didn't work out, and you could say, you know what? Maybe he just wasn't good enough for the Chicago Bears. But in defense of Justin Fields, the Chicago Bears were not good enough for him either. And you know what? Shame on the Bears. Shame on this franchise I've rooted for so long. The Chicago Bears never gave Justin Fields a chance. They never gave him a chance. They did not give him what he needed. The most important thing of all, a coach who would help him work on the things he needed to get better at, like holding onto the football for too long, making quicker decisions. Quarterback clock. 1, 2. Okay, got to do something. Fields struggled with that all of last year, as well as the years before. But you know what? It never helped that he did not have a coach who taught him those things. Whether it was the quarterback's coach or the head coach, nobody helped Fields with the thing. Nobody in Chicago, coaching-wise, helped Fields with what he needed. And that's why the Bears are where we're at again. I hate it for Justin Fields, but you know what? He deserves better, too. All right, it didn't work out in Chicago, but Fields deserves better than this. And shame on the Chicago Bears. So that's just my thoughts there. And okay, maybe he's not good enough to play in this league, but I believe Pittsburgh is going to give him a chance. I think the Steelers are going to do, and Mike Tomlin, they're going to do everything they can to help Justin Fields be an NFL caliber quarterback. So, gonna miss that guy. And we'll talk more about what the Bears are going to do at quarterback in the draft another time. But Justin Fields, thanks for everything, man. Thanks for being a Chicago Bear. Gonna miss you, and I wish you all the best in the Steel City. Kick some ass and prove the haters wrong. All right, and now we move on to March Madness. So, first 4 action has been happening, of course. Of course, we had 2 games yesterday, and we got 2 more games today. Now, I'm going to say this. There was a lot that happened in the tournaments that were leading up to Selection Sunday. All the conference tournaments and whatnot. So many bid thefts and whatnot. So the NCAA committee, they did not have an easy decision going forward to Selection Sunday. They did not. No matter what they did, there was going to be some moves. There were going to be some selections they made that we were going to question. So, and you know what? I was always convinced, okay, they're going to do the best they can. They're not getting a lot of sleep the night before Selection Sunday, but I'm convinced they'll do the best they can. And while they put a lot of work into Selection Sunday, I just got to say it. The selection, every bit of criticism that is coming towards the selection committee is warranted, unfortunately. It wasn't an easy job, and there were, in some selections, I thought they did the best they could. But we had a few others where I look at it and I just shake my head. They could have done way better. And this year, there's one selection in particular that I think is going to haunt the committee for some time. That one that everyone's going to rip them over, and deservingly so, unfortunately, for the committee. I just want to know one thing. Whose idea was it to put Virginia in the NCAA tournament, even as a play-in team? Like, what did the NCAA, or who on the NCAA committee, presuming not everyone voted to put Virginia in, who in the NCAA committee decided it was a good idea to put Virginia in the tournament? And don't get me wrong, I don't hate Virginia University. I don't hate Virginia basketball. I have respect for them. And I've got nothing against them, even though they ended my Boilermakers run and broke our Boilermaker Nation's hearts in 2019 when they denied us a trip to the Final Four. But I don't dislike them for that. I don't dislike them at all. And Tony Bennett, great coach and an even better man. All right. But that last night's game between Colorado State and Virginia, it pretty much made the committee look really, really bad. Like, this decision by the committee, this might be one of the worst decisions ever, if not the worst decision by the committee. Clearly, Virginia should not have been an NCAA tournament team. The resume didn't speak for it, nor did their net ranking, but they got in, and America had to watch as Virginia only put up 42 points against Colorado State. And they only had 14 points in the first half of that game. There was a point where they went 12 minutes without scoring a point. Now, don't get me wrong, Virginia's defense played well in that game, in that first 4 game against Colorado State, but the offense was painful to watch. I mean, I feel sorry for those kids, but they should not have been in the NCAA tournament. I mean, this is clearly, as I've said, this makes the committee look really, the selection committee looks really, really bad after this choice, after the decision to put Virginia in. I think Indiana State, or even one of those Big East schools like Seton Hall, Providence, or even St. John's would have been a better selection than Virginia to play in the first 4. One of those schools, and I think Indiana State should have gotten in. Okay, Indiana State, I know they had that 1-4 quad 1 record, but in terms of net ranking, which should be one of the bigger metrics for evaluating who should be in the tournament, they were 29th in the net. That would put you in the tournament more times than not. But instead, Indiana State ends up playing in the NIT, but they should have been in the NCAA tournament. They, along with those Big East schools I named, they would have put up a better game against Colorado State than Virginia. Shoot, any of those they could have been in any of those first 4 games. Now Colorado State, no criticism for them. Of course, they might, at times I thought they didn't look at their best, but they didn't need to be based on what I was seeing from Virginia. And if anything, Colorado State should have been seated higher in the tournament, if you ask me. Maybe even those Mountain West schools are good. I don't know how far they'll go in the tournament, but the Mountain West schools like Colorado State and perhaps even Boise State should have been seated higher. They should not have been have to play as one of the first four. Or they should not have been in the first four games. They should have been in playing on Thursday or Friday. But here we are. But hey, Colorado State, I bet they're not complaining. They're in the tournament. They're going into the round of 64, and they earned it. I mean, they took it to Virginia, and they didn't even have to be at their best. I mean, they weren't. I don't know if they were at their best, but they didn't have to be at their best because Virginia really struggled. Colorado State, they looked like they were having fun. I just think they should have been seated higher, all things considered. So, going forward, from what I could tell from this game, I mean, it was, like I said, it was hard to watch Virginia, and I feel bad for those kids that played for Virginia, and I felt bad for Tony Bennett because that was hard to watch. But, man, I could go on about like how they have not won a tournament game since going on that championship run back in 2019, but we won't dive into that. The point is, I think the committee I think they need to evaluate some things in the offseason. They need to figure out better metrics for deciding NCAA tournament teams going forward. Although I've got a feeling, unfortunately, that Virginia was put, and I don't want to accuse the committee of anything specific, but I have a feeling that Virginia was put in the tournament based on their name, the name of the university, and not necessarily their resume or net ranking. They were put in because it's Virginia basketball. And the NCAA, and you could say, and one could say the NCAA tournament's trying to, or the NCAA tournament committee is trying to make as much money as possible. But with all that being said, Virginia should not have been in, and it showed last night. They struggled mightily on offense. It's difficult to watch. So, but that is, you know what? I feel bad, and I feel bad for Virginia, for those kids playing and Tony Bennett, because they should not have been put in the tournament. They should have been playing in the NIT. The NCAA tournament committee made a huge mistake here, and one that's going to be scrutinized for years to come. And going forward, the committee needs to take a deeper look at and reevaluate how they decide who gets in the tournament and who does not, or who is deserving of a spot, who has earned a spot in the tournament and who really does not. So, a lot of work ahead this offseason for the NCAA committee, regardless of how the NCAA tournament goes. Because having a tournament team like Virginia perform so poorly in a first four game, even just a first four game, is not a good look for the NCAA tournament committee. And this is something they're going to be thinking about for years to come, sadly. All right. Enough talk about that. Let's move on to my final subject. So, it's time for the tournament. And, all right, spoiler alert, I am going to reveal my bracket after this video. I'm going to post it on Two Guys Talk Sports. I'll try to post it here on YouTube, but I plan to post it also on our Facebook page as well. So, I'm not going to... So, who I picked, I'll let you guys see for that and decide what you think. So, what we're going to talk about then... So... With the first weekend of March, or the first weekend of March Madness, or the NCAA tournament, as its real name, of course. March Madness is the nickname. When we think the first weekend of the NCAA tournament, we think about upsets a lot. And they did, in the last few years, they've been happening in great numbers. So, with that in mind, I'm gonna name 3 to 5 potential upsets that I think you should keep in mind if you haven't made a bracket yet. But here's a couple teams I'll name that I think are going to be on upset alert for this first round, whether the upset happens or not. So, here's one. So, first matchup I'm going to name that is very high in terms of potential, and the highest in terms of potential for upset. Wisconsin and JMU, or James Madison University. I know Wisconsin is coming in red hot. They're playing some of their best basketball at the right time. But with that being said, James Madison may have been potentially the worst draw they could have gotten as a 5 seed. Now, Wisconsin, coming into the Big Ten tournament, was a 6 seed. They improved a lot. They improved to a 5 seed because they played better and almost won the Big Ten tournament. But, man, getting James Madison depending on the outcome of the game, that getting James Madison may prove to be a brutal draw for Wisconsin. I think that plays out. And remember, James Madison beat Michigan State at the start of the season, so they're no stranger to playing Big Ten teams. So I think with the way James Madison likes to play basketball, which is much different than Wisconsin's, that could give the Badgers a lot of trouble. So we'll see how that matchup goes, but that's a matchup that I think we need to keep an eye on, because that, I think, could be an upset, a massive upset. So that's number one on my list. Going with number two and staying in the South. I think the South region has a lot of potential to just go crazy, just a full meltdown of upsets, or go full meltdown mode and a lot of upsets. Another matchup to keep an eye on that could be high in upset potential: Oakland and Kentucky. Now, Kentucky, they're playing like Wisconsin. Kentucky's played really good basketball as of late. They got a talented team. But so has Oakland University, and you look at the two teams. Kentucky is a bit of a younger team, a lot of freshmen, while Oakland is a more veteran team. You got Trey Townsend leading the way, who's a senior. Correct me if I'm wrong there. I apologize if I got that wrong. Sorry, Trey. And with Greg Campbell, who has been with that team for 40 years, that experience and that know-how means a lot. And Oakland has one of the most highest scoring offenses in college basketball. Of course, Kentucky, they're very high-powered on offense as well. So if this comes into a game where it's low scoring, that could actually favor Oakland, because Oakland is also a team that's used to playing in close games throughout the season. So if you're Kentucky, don't screw around, all right? Kentucky needs to just full killer instinct. Go for the kill. If Kentucky scores a ton of points, it'll be tough for Oakland. And I think that upset will be avoided. But if it's like a low-scoring, close game, then I think Oakland's got a chance. So for those reasons, there's potential for that upset as well. Okay, moving on and then finally, my number three, we're going to move to the Midwest. For the Midwest, Samford and Kansas. This is another one that could be an upset. And the reasons are a few. So Samford, Purdue, now my Boilermakers played them in the first game of the year. And I don't think Samford really showed up. They played well, but I don't think we were really going to know how good they were in that game alone. But as the season went on, we would know more how Samford would be. So with here's the thing, okay? So Samford's pretty good. They deserve to be in the tournament. But of course, here's the reason I think that they can upset Kansas. Kansas, a lot of talent on that team. But this Kansas team has had Kansas has had trouble with consistency and chemistry all season long. And number two, Kansas is not 100% healthy too. In fact, Bill Self just announced that Kevin McCullough Jr. will be out for the entire NCAA tournament. That's a big loss for Kansas. For a team that's struggled with consistency all season, has had to battle their way into the NCAA tournament, even into a 4 seed, that's a huge loss. So, for those reasons, that's why there's upset potential in that one as well. So, those are my top three. Then the next two will go you could say honorable mentions, but ones to keep an eye on. Here's a particularly interesting one. Grand Canyon and St. Mary's out in the West. There could be upset potential there. Grand Canyon, they like to play fast. They're coached by Bryce Drew, who's a fantastic coach. St. Mary's, of course, they started the season slow, been playing their best basketball as of late. It's going to be interesting to see how this matchup turns out. But, now, sorry about the sputtering there. So, the fast-paced style could give St. Mary's some trouble. But St. Mary's has plenty of experience. It's just, it's one of those matchups that really can go either way, but still one that I think to keep an eye out for when it comes to upset potential. So, St. Mary's and Grand Canyon, because Grand Canyon, underrated basketball team. And then finally, another one to keep an eye out for, if we're going big time. So, I mentioned there's also been a high possibility of a 15-2 upset. if I had to guess, excuse me there, as to one that I think one to keep an eye out for in terms of the 15-2 upsets, Western Kentucky and Marquette. That would be my fifth and final one. You got former Purdue Boilermaker Brandon Newman plays on that team, and you got former assistant coach and Steve Lutz who's coaching Western Kentucky. Very underrated team. They won their conference, and they take a lot from Matt Painter's style of basketball. Considering that Lutz and Newman have played Marquette before, not to say they're the only reasons why Western Kentucky would have a chance against Marquette, but there's questions about how healthy Marquette is. So we'll see on that, because Tyler Kolek, they held him out of the Big East tournament. So there's a question of also whether or not he's going to be ready for the NCAA tournament. I think he will, but how much will he be ready? That's the big question. So with Tyler Kolek in mind, and as well as Newman's knowledge of Marquette, and maybe even Steve Lutz's knowledge of how Marquette plays, as well as a few other things, I think that's why I would rank Western Kentucky and Marquette like number 5 on my list of potential for upset in terms of all the games of the NCAA tournament this weekend. So, just my list of who I think of games that I have high potential, have high upset potential. Sorry about the sputtering. All right, just a few final thoughts from the tournament. All right. Can UConn repeat? Can they go the distance in a very tough East? Purdue, can they finally work out those demons? Will Braden Smith and Zach Edey be healthy enough for Purdue to make their run? That is going to be one thing to watch out for Purdue. And also, which side of the bracket is going to be the craziest side? These are answers that will be intriguing. These are intriguing questions that remain to be seen in the NCAA tournament. But a few more thoughts that I have in mind to go with the games that I think have very high upset potential as well. Sorry if I got up topic there. Okay, and on to this day in sports history. And on this day, the 20th of March, 1937, England beats Scotland 6-3 at Murrayfield, Edinburgh to clinch the home nation's rugby championship and Triple Crown. All right, sports fans, that's all I got for this week's Waxon Wednesday. Remember, if you have any questions you have, leave them below, and I might answer them next week. Hey, if you got a bracket, feel free to share it with me. I'd love to hear what's in your bracket. You know, it's that wonderful time of year in March. All right. With all that being said, thank you all so much for watching this week's Wax Wednesday. And this is Jay Waxman from Two Guys Talk Sports. Signing off. Enjoy the madness, everyone.